Today we're going to be talking about families. So, first, think about this. Does family size matter? Why or why not? Do you think it's better to have a big family or a small one? Why? Now, let's think about this. Is your family big or small? And how many family members do you have? Please think about this before class so we can all share. Great, let's continue. Now, I would like you to please complete these sentences with the words in the box. Pause the video while you work on this, and remember to have this ready before class because we're going to check it then. Okay? Great. Now let's go ahead and continue. What do you think are the pros and the cons of having a big family? Please pause the video and write down 3 pros and 3 cons before a class. We're going to share them. Excellent. Now, do you know the meaning of these words? Blame someone, long for something, and miss out on something? If you don't, just look for the meaning and we're going to share during class. If you already know the meaning, that's totally okay. Let's move on. Now, think about this. Is it better to have a big family or a small family? Is it better to have siblings or to be an only child? And why is that? Are you an only child or do you have any siblings? In my case, I have 2 brothers, but I have 2 cousins who are only childs. And honestly, they were a bit lonely. And now think. How would your life have been with siblings if you're an only child, or without siblings if you have some? Remember to think about this so we can all share in class. Okay? Great. Now let's continue. If you see here, we have 4 sentences but they are incomplete. I want you to complete them with your own ideas. For example, I think it is important for children to have someone to play with, to what? Please pause the video while you work on this. Okay, we're going to share our ideas during class. Now, let's go to student book page 77, exercise A. Here, we need to circle the correct form of the verbs in order to complete the sentences. If you're not sure, you can check on the previous page to help you. For example, number 1. Osman thinks it is important for children to grow up or growing up with other children. In this case, we should choose to grow up. Now pause the video while you work on the rest. Okay, let's go ahead and check. Sophia says that she was sometimes a little lonely playing by herself. Lily says she always had enough to eat as a child. Sean feels that he had no real problems being an only child. Very good. Now, which sentences are talking about actual experiences, like specific ones? And which sentences are making generalizations? You need to find 2 for each. Pause the video if you need to. So, if you notice, the sentences are talking about actual or specific experiences are number 2 and number 4. And the ones that are making generalizations are number 1 and number 3. Let's take a look at this. Today we're talking about infinitives or verbs that have a to before them, to eat, to run, or ing forms, gerunds. Basically, we have the verb with ing. So, it is very common that after adjectives we use infinitives, especially in it clauses. This is extremely common in generalizations. For example, it was impossible for her to have time for herself. In this case, we have the adjective impossible and we use an infinitive to have. This is a generalization. However, you can use an ing form after an adjective, but this is only common when you're describing an actual experience or a specific experience. For example, I was a bit lonely being by myself all the time. Lonely is our adjective, but this time we are using a gerund because we're talking about a real a specific experience. Now, going back to infinitives. After nouns or pronouns, we use infinitives to add more details or say how you use them. For example, we always had nice clothes to wear. There was always someone to play with. We're giving either more details or we're explaining how we use them. We have some expressions that are followed by a gerund. For example, have fun, have trouble or problems, or be worth. For example, I had fun growing up in my family. I had no problems growing up with my family. It is not worth worrying about. Now, please be careful. Don't add for or use for instead of to. We had books to read. It is not correct to say we had books for read, or for to read is not correct. And be aware that in conversation, it is very common to use infinitives after adjectives. It is not so common to use gerunds. Now let's go ahead and practice. Let's go to our workbook page 52, exercise A. Here, we need to circle the correct form of the verbs in order to complete this childhood memory. Let's begin. As an only child, my mother had always wanted siblings with. In this case, we're going to use to play. Why? Because if you notice, we have the word siblings before. Siblings is a noun and it should be followed by an infinitive. Now pause the video while you work on the rest, then come back to check. Okay, let's see. When she and my father got married, they agreed it was important to have more than one child. So they had 6 kids. Things weren't always easy though. For example, there was never anywhere quiet to sit in our house. But I always had fun hanging out with my older sisters. My brother was the only boy, so he was often bored playing with girls all the time. And I think he was a bit lonely being surrounded by so many girls. But mostly, we had no problem growing up in such a big family, and we're all still very close. Did you have the same? Great, let's continue. Now we're going to be working on exercise B. Here, you have to complete the conversation using the correct form of the verbs, either a gerund or an infinitive. Be aware that sometimes more than one answer is possible. Let's do number 1 together. You were an only child, right? Weren't you bored playing by yourself all the time? Sometimes. But there were a lot of families in my building, so there was always a neighbor's apartment to go to. We have some nouns, that's why we're using an infinitive. Let's do the question in number 2. Was it tough with so many kids in the house? Did you argue a lot? In this case, I am not making a generalization, I am talking about a real, a specific experience. So we're going to use a gerund, growing up. Pause the video while you work on the rest, please. Okay, guys, we're going to check this during our class. To finish, I want you to please take these 5 ideas and complete with your own ideas. For example, it wasn't easy for me, it is too difficult for me, etc. Pause the video while you work on this, please. Okay, guys, we're going to share during class. I will see you then. Bye bye!